She was insulted and left behind by her ex, until a billionaire's kiss made him watch in silent regret. The chandeliers at the Magnolia Grand Ballroom glittered like trapped stars. Music swelled, laughter rippled through champagne and silk, but Celeste Ward stood perfectly still, a quiet figure in an emerald dress caught between pride and pain. Across the room, Ryan Cole was laughing, the same man who once told her, "You'll never be enough for any man who matters." His words had lived inside her for months, sharp, unhealed. Tonight, he laughed again, until the moment Landon Voss stepped beside her, the billionaire everyone feared. Calm, precise, untouchable. Without a word, he reached for her hand and kissed her. It wasn't polite, it wasn't planned. It was slow, sure, electric. The music died. The whispers vanished. Even Ryan's smile collapsed into silence. For the first time, Celeste didn't shrink beneath the weight of a man's opinion. She rose, in front of them all. Sometimes life doesn't give warnings, only moments that rewrite everything. Stay with this story. It may feel like your own. The music stopped. The air itself seemed to pause. Every face in the Magnolia Ballroom turned toward them, eyes bright with curiosity, envy, disbelief. Celeste could hear nothing but the pulse in her ears. The taste of champagne, the weight of his hand, the echo of that kiss, all blurred together. People whispered behind half-raised glasses. Women stared as if she had stolen their dream. Men looked at Landon Voss with a mix of awe and threat. Celeste's breath came uneven, her body rigid, afraid to move. Across the room, Ryan Cole's laughter died. His jaw tightened. His hand clamped around Veronica's wrist until she winced. Red crept up his neck. He, the man who once mocked her, now stood exposed in front of everyone who mattered. Landon's arm stayed firm at Celeste's waist. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked only at her, eyes steady, protective. And in that stillness, she felt something shift inside. The humiliation he had given her months ago was melting, replaced by something fierce and unfamiliar. Power. Sometimes silence speaks louder than applause. A flash of memory cut through the hush like lightning. 6 months earlier, rain on the window, Ryan's voice sharp as glass. "No real man fights for a woman like you." Those words had sunk deep, finding every hidden doubt she carried. She had sat on the floor of her small apartment, knees drawn to her chest, counting every failure she thought she owned. Her rent late, her phone silent, her heart hollow. Back then, she believed him. She believed her worth ended where his approval stopped. Now the memory collided with the present. Bright lights, silk gowns, the faint scent of Landon's cologne still clinging to her skin. His lips had touched hers only moments ago, yet the echo was stronger than Ryan's cruelty had ever been. The past didn't vanish, but it cracked. Through that crack, something new began to breathe. Quiet, steady, alive. The girl he broke was still here, but she was no longer his to define. Landon's hand tightened gently at her waist. He turned toward the nearest cluster of stunned faces and smiled. Calm, deliberate. "Excuse us," he said, voice smooth as polished steel. "We've got a sculpture to win." The room exhaled all at once, a ripple of whispers chasing his words. Celeste's pulse stumbled. Was he pretending? Protecting? Or both? He guided her toward the auction stage as if nothing unusual had happened. Every step measured, every gesture claiming space. Around them, people murmured her name, trying to remember where they'd heard it before. Ryan's eyes followed, dark and furious. Veronica leaned in, whispering something venomous that no one dared repeat. Celeste wanted to disappear, but Landon's steady presence anchored her. That small, confident smile told the room a story. She belonged here, and even if she didn't believe it yet, they did. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply smiles. They moved together through the glittering aisle of tables. Crystal reflected the chandelier light like broken stars beneath their feet. Every gaze followed, measuring her dress, her worth, her sudden rise. Celeste's hand trembled in Landon's, but he didn't let go. His warmth steadied her more than words could. Each step felt unreal. Past the women who once ignored her, past the men who never noticed her name. She could feel the change rippling behind her like wind through silk. For years, she had made herself small to survive in other people's worlds. Now she was visible, unavoidably so. She glanced up at Landon. He wasn't smiling anymore. His expression was focused, calm, almost proud. In that brief look, she understood. He had done this to shield her, not to show off. Still, the result was the same. For the first time, eyes that once looked down on her were forced to look up, and Celeste Ward kept walking. The auction began. Voices rose and fell, crystal numbers flashing across the screen. Celeste sat beside Landon, every nerve awake. The ballroom smelled of money and control. From 2 seats away, Veronica leaned forward. "Guess assistants come with bonuses now," she said, lips curved in a sugar-coated smile. Laughter fluttered across the table, thin and cruel. Celeste froze. Heat climbed her neck. The word assistant cut sharper than she expected. Landon turned his head slowly. His voice stayed low, but every syllable carried. "She's more than you'll ever be." The laughter died. Veronica blinked, caught off guard. Ryan looked away, pretending to read the program. The auctioneer's voice filled the silence, but the damage was done. Celeste sat still, her heart a small storm. No one had ever defended her like that. Not publicly, not with certainty. She didn't know whether to thank him or run, but when Landon's hand brushed hers under the table, her breath caught. It wasn't a show anymore. Something real had slipped through the cracks. The auction lights shimmered across polished tables, across the glass of her untouched wine. Celeste stole a glance at Landon. He looked composed, almost distant, as if unaware of what he had just done. Yet the air between them pulsed. Every sense in her body sharpened to the rhythm of his presence. He wasn't just her boss anymore. He was the man who had stood up for her when no one else did. Her heart ached from confusion. Why had he risked his name for hers? There was no logic in it, only a quiet current pulling her closer. When he turned and their eyes met, she saw no arrogance, only calm assurance. It made her dizzy. The gala moved around them like another world, but for Celeste, the lights had shifted. They no longer burned cold above her. They glowed warm, soft, and dangerously close. They left the ballroom in near silence. Outside, Charleston's streets gleamed wet under streetlights. The car moved through the quiet city, the only sound the hum of the engine. Celeste stared out the window, watching reflections of gold ripple across the glass. Landon's profile was calm, unreadable. He broke the silence. "You okay?" She nodded. "Yes." But inside, her thoughts spun faster than the tires on the road. Was he protecting her, or had that moment meant something else? Was she a burden he'd rescued, or a woman he'd finally seen? He didn't press. He only drove, hands steady on the wheel, eyes on the road ahead. When he dropped her at her building, he said softly, "Good night, Celeste." Her name sounded different in his voice, gentle, deliberate. She stood on the sidewalk, watching the taillights disappear, and for the first time, she realized silence could ask louder questions than words. Her apartment was small and still. The gala dress hung over a chair, shimmering faintly in the half-light. Celeste sat on the edge of her bed, fingers touching her lips. The memory of that kiss felt alive, almost cruel in its tenderness. She could still feel the strength in his hand, the certainty she had borrowed for one impossible night. The clock ticked too loud. She tried to tell herself it meant nothing, an act, a rescue, a business gesture, but every time she breathed, the lie cracked a little more. Was it all an act? The question chased itself around the room until it became a whisper she couldn't silence. She looked around at the empty walls, the bills on the counter, the life she had built alone. Then she whispered to the dark, "If it was nothing, why does it hurt this much?" Her phone buzzed, cutting through the quiet. The screen lit her face with a pale glow. A message from Landon. "Coffee tomorrow. 9 a.m. No explanation, no question mark, just a time and place. Celeste read it twice, maybe 3 times. Her thumb hovered above the screen, uncertain what reply would sound sane. The city outside was asleep, but her heart refused to rest. She thought of the kiss, the stares, his voice when he said she was more. Maybe tomorrow would bring clarity, or maybe it would undo her completely. She placed the phone on her nightstand and lay back, eyes open to the ceiling. 1 message, 2 words, and her world had changed direction again. By morning, she knew she would go. The cafe was quiet, tucked between oak trees and morning light. Landon was already there, sleeves rolled, a cup untouched before him. When Celeste entered, he stood, his calm expression breaking for the first time. "Thank you for coming," he said. She sat, heart still echoing last night's silence. He cleared his throat. "I shouldn't have acted without asking. The kiss. I crossed a line." Celeste stared into her coffee. "You saved me from humiliation. You didn't owe me that." A pause stretched between them, long enough to make her lift her eyes. Landon's voice lowered. That kiss wasn't for show. The words landed heavy, real. Celeste forgot how to breathe for a heartbeat. He wasn't apologizing to erase it. He was apologizing for wanting it. Outside, a breeze moved the cafe curtains, gentle as a sigh. Inside, something fragile began to shift. 2 people, both used to control, finally let truth sit between them. Celeste stirred her coffee until the foam disappeared. Her fingers trembled. "I thought it was just me," she said quietly. Landon waited. She drew in a breath. "I've felt something for you for a long time, but it scared me. You're my boss. My whole life depends on not crossing that line." His hand reached across the table. Warm, steady. "Then we take it slow," he said. "No pressure, no expectations, just honesty." She didn't pull away. The city sounds outside blurred into one soft hum. He smiled. Small, careful, real. For years she had spoken to him in schedules and reports, never in truths. Now every word felt like standing at the edge of a new life. She nodded, eyes shining, a quiet agreement forming between them. Whatever came next would be theirs to build, step by step. The next weeks unfolded in small, secret pieces. Dinner at quiet restaurants far from downtown, walks along the harbor where no one knew their names. Landon listened more than he spoke. Celeste found herself laughing again, surprised at the sound. He told her about failed ventures, about cooking at midnight when work wouldn't stop chasing him. She told him about her mother, about fear, about how she'd learned to survive on almost nothing. They didn't need grand gestures, only stillness, honesty, the comfort of being seen. Sometimes he brushed her hand as they walked. Sometimes silence filled the space between words. But it wasn't empty. It was full of something growing, something careful and alive. When they parted at night, she caught herself looking back. Every time, he was still there, watching until she disappeared around the corner. The peace didn't last. One morning, Celeste arrived at work to the sound of whispers. Screens lit up with headlines. Assistant or lover? The woman behind Landon Voss. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from colleagues, strangers, even old friends asking for gossip. Someone had posted photos. The gala, the kiss, a hand on her waist. The comments beneath were cruel. She seduced her boss. She played the long game. Celeste's stomach turned cold. Every achievement, every long night of work, rewritten in a sentence. Landon's office door stayed closed. He texted, "Ignore them. I'll handle it." But the whispers followed her down every hall. She wanted to disappear, yet pride held her spine straight. She had survived worse, but not like this. Not when the world twisted love into ambition. Fame felt nothing like power. It felt like exposure. A week later, Landon insisted on dinner at his mother's estate. The house was all white marble and quiet judgment. Margaret Voss greeted Celeste with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Ambition is charming," she said, pouring wine. "When it's earned." Celeste's fingers tightened around her glass. Landon shifted beside her, eyes warning but polite. Dinner stretched long. Questions wrapped in compliments. "So, dear, how does one go from assistant to partner so quickly?" Each word felt like a test she hadn't studied for. Celeste answered with measured calm, voice steady though her pulse raced. Landon finally spoke. "Mother, Celeste earned everything she has. Her work changed my company." Margaret raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The silence after his defense felt heavier than words. Celeste smiled faintly, refusing to look away. Respect wouldn't be given tonight, but she wouldn't bow to anyone again. The meal dragged on under the heavy glow of chandeliers. Margaret's words lingered in the air, soft but sharp. Celeste kept her smile fixed, but her heart thudded painfully. Then Landon set down his glass and rose from his seat. His voice carried through the room, calm but unshakable. "She is the woman I'm falling in love with." Every fork froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Margaret's eyes widened. The servants went still. Celeste's breath caught. The room felt too small, too bright. She wanted to stop him, to protect him from what came next. But he kept going. "If that offends anyone," he said, gaze steady on his mother, "then that's their problem, not hers." Silence fell like glass breaking in slow motion. Margaret finally looked away, her expression unreadable. Landon sat again, his hand finding Celeste's under the table. His thumb traced a small circle on her skin, a silent promise that he wouldn't take back a word. For the first time in her life, someone had stood for her, completely, publicly. The ride back to the city was silent. Rain tapped against the windshield, turning the world into blurred light. Celeste stared straight ahead, fighting the sting in her eyes. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered, not in front of her. Landon's hands tightened on the wheel. "I don't regret it." She turned to him, voice shaking. "Your mother will hate me now." "She'll live with it," he said quietly. "I've lived long enough doing what she expected." Tears slipped down her cheek before she could stop them. She wasn't used to being defended, not at that cost. He reached over, brushed the tear away, his touch gentle. "I meant every word," he said. She closed her eyes. That was the problem. She believed him. And belief was the scariest thing of all. Days later, the rain came again. Celeste stepped from the office lobby and found Ryan waiting near the streetlight. His hair was soaked, his suit clinging to him. "Celeste," he said, voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" She hesitated, but pity was still a reflex she hadn't unlearned. They ducked into a small cafe nearby, rain streaking the window beside them. Ryan looked older, less certain. "I made a mistake," he said, "leaving you, watching you with him. It killed me." Celeste stirred her tea, eyes on the steam. "What do you want from me?" "Another chance." The words were soft, desperate. Veronica was nothing. You were real. She met his gaze, calm now. "The rain doesn't wash everything clean, Ryan." He flinched, but she didn't move, didn't reach across the table. The woman he'd once broken was gone. Ryan leaned forward, tone sharpening. "You think he'll marry you? Come on, Celeste. Men like Voss don't end up with women like us." The old shame flickered, but didn't stay. Celeste's jaw tightened. "I'd rather risk love than stay small." He blinked, thrown off balance. "You really believe he sees you that way?" "Yes," she said simply. "Because when he looks at me, I don't disappear." Ryan looked away, fingers tapping restlessly on the table. Outside, rain slid down the glass like seconds falling away. "I hope you're right," he muttered. "I hope he doesn't crush you the way I did." She stood, calm, collected. "I survived you. I'll survive anything." Then she left him there, surrounded by his own reflection, the only company he'd earned. That night, Celeste's phone rang. Landon's voice came through, low and steady. "You sound tired. What happened?" She hesitated, then told him everything. Ryan waiting in the rain, the conversation, the doubts that still stung. Landon listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "He's wrong." His certainty wrapped around her like warmth in the dark. "I'll prove it," he added. "Not with promises, with time." She didn't answer right away. Sometimes silence carried more truth than words. "I believe you," she said at last. "Good," he replied. "Then rest. Tomorrow, we start fresh." She hung up, staring at the ceiling, the sound of rain still whispering against the window. For once, the future didn't scare her. It waited, quiet, steady, alive. The next morning, Landon called her into his office. His desk was covered in documents, signatures marked in blue ink. Celeste's chest tightened as he slid one across to her. "What is this?" she asked. "Your new title," he said. "Partner. Strategic development." She froze. He continued, voice calm but firm. "You'll never be just my assistant. You built this company with me. It's time everyone knew that." Her hands shook as she read the agreement. Equity transfer, full authority, her name beside his. The words blurred for a moment. "Landon, this changes everything." "It should," he said. "That's the point." She looked up. He was watching her, not as a boss, but as a man who wanted her to see what he saw. Her throat tightened. "Thank you." "No," he said gently. "Don't thank me. Earn it. Lead it. Own it." And just like that, she realized he wasn't giving her power. He was reminding her it had always been hers. A week later, Celeste walked into the boardroom for the first time as partner. Every seat was filled with powerful faces. Investors, directors, skeptics. She set down her notes, steady hands hiding a racing pulse. For 45 minutes, she spoke. Market data, projections, strategy, all clear, precise, her voice unwavering. Every question thrown her way, she met head-on. Still, she saw the looks, the unspoken doubts, the quiet disbelief that someone like her could stand at the head of their table. When she finished, silence lingered. Then James Whitfield, one of the oldest members, began to clap. Others followed. The sound grew until the room filled with applause. Landon smiled from across the table, pride softening his features. Celeste exhaled, her shoulders lowering for the first time all week. She hadn't just survived the room, she had owned it. A few days later, Margaret Voss asked to see her. Celeste entered the penthouse cautiously, unsure which version of the woman awaited her. Margaret gestured toward a seat by the window. The city stretched beneath them, golden in the afternoon light. "I watched the board meeting," Margaret said. "You remind me of myself at your age." Celeste blinked, caught off guard. "I didn't expect that." Margaret smiled faintly. "When I started my fashion line, people said the same things about me that they say about you now. Ambitious, unfit, reaching too high." She paused, studying Celeste with eyes no longer cold. "I was wrong to judge you. You're good for him, and for the company." The tension in Celeste's chest eased, replaced by quiet relief. "Thank you," she said softly. Margaret nodded once. "Make sure he deserves you." For the first time, the words felt like blessing, not warning. The weeks that followed felt almost unreal. Work thrived, the gossip quieted, and the city seemed gentler somehow. Celeste and Landon spent evenings at home, cooking together, laughing about meetings gone wrong. Sometimes he'd fall asleep on the couch, papers still in hand. She'd cover him with a blanket, watching the hardness in his face fade in sleep. It was ordinary, beautiful, terrifying in its calm. For the first time, there was no battle to fight. Only life. Shared, quiet, simple. They talked about travel, about the future, about building something lasting. Celeste began to believe they had outrun the storm. But calm often carries its own warning. The world outside their window hadn't forgotten their names. It was only waiting. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Her phone lit up before sunrise. Calls, messages, notifications piling faster than she could read. Headlines screamed across every site. From assistant to partner, social climber or genius. Photos, rumors, timelines, each word twisting truth into spectacle. The same story she'd worked so hard to write now belonged to strangers. By noon, reporters were outside the building. By evening, clients were asking questions. Celeste sat alone in her office, staring at the screen, hands trembling. Her reflection in the glass looked like someone else, a woman undone by success. Her phone buzzed again. Landon. "Stay put, I'm coming." She set the phone down, pressed her palms to her eyes, and whispered, "Not again, please, not again." But the world had already decided what it wanted to believe. The apartment was dark except for the city lights bleeding through the blinds. Celeste sat on the floor, laptop open. Headlines repeating the same lie over and over. Gold digger. Social climber. The woman who rose too fast. Her phone kept ringing. She turned it face down, pressing her palms to her eyes. "Maybe I don't belong in his world," she whispered. All her life she had fought to be enough. Now, even love felt like another test she was doomed to fail. The knock on her door never came. Landon had called, texted, waited, but she couldn't face him, not when the world was laughing again. Tears came slow, silent, exhausted. She thought of the girl she used to be, the one who cried over Ryan's cruelty. It felt like nothing had changed. But somewhere deep, another voice stirred. You didn't climb, you built. It wasn't loud yet, but it waited, just like he did. The next morning, the world gathered to watch. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, lights burned hot. Landon Voss stood at the podium, a calm storm in a dark suit. Beside him, Celeste, pale, trembling, but unbroken. "I called this conference to correct a story," he said. "She's not my assistant. She's my equal." He spoke of her work, her ideas, her achievements, each word stripping away the rumors, brick by brick. Then he turned to her, his voice lowering, steady and full. "They call her lucky," he said, "but I'm the lucky one." The room fell still, and before anyone could move, Landon sank to one knee. He pulled out a velvet box, opened it toward the blinding light. "Celeste Ward," he said, "will you marry me?" For a second, even the cameras stopped clicking. The noise of the world vanished, leaving only two hearts in the silence. Tears blurred the lights until the crowd became a sea of color. Celeste pressed her hand to her mouth, shaking her head in disbelief. "Landon." He waited, patient, eyes steady on hers. Every doubt, every scar, every cruel whisper collapsed under that gaze. She had spent her life proving her worth. Now someone saw it without asking her to. "Yes," she said. Then louder, firmer, "Yes." The room erupted. Cameras flared, reporters shouted, flashes turned to thunder. But all she could see was him rising, slipping the ring onto her trembling hand. He kissed her, and the crowd disappeared again. It wasn't spectacle. It was truth. Somewhere in the noise, she laughed through her tears. He smiled, whispering against her ear, "No more hiding." And for the first time she believed the world couldn't take this from her. Months later, under a sky painted gold, they married at a vineyard outside Charleston. Rows of vines framed the ceremony, the air sweet with spring. Celeste walked toward Landon, her dress simple, elegant, the wind lifting her veil. Margaret smiled from the front row, even her eyes softened. Vows were whispered, promises sealed. Applause rose like a tide. At the reception, a quiet shadow appeared near the edge of the crowd. Ryan. He waited until the music softened, then stepped forward. "I came to say I'm sorry," he said. "You were right. You deserved better." Celeste met his eyes, calm. "I hope you find what I did," she said. "Peace." He nodded once, then left, disappearing down the vineyard path. She turned back to Landon, the sunset glowing behind him. Freedom tasted like forgiveness. Evening draped the sea in soft gold. Celeste stood on the balcony, the wind lifting her hair, the horizon wide and calm. She traced the ring on her finger, its light flickering like a heartbeat. "They called me ordinary," she said softly, But love made me extraordinary. Behind her came the sound of quiet laughter, Landon's voice mingling with those she now called family. It was gentle, real, unpretentious. Celeste closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered the girl who once stood trembling under ballroom lights, humiliated, invisible. That girl was gone. What remained was a woman who had built her own worth, who had learned that dignity doesn't come from status, but from how you rise after being broken. She smiled at the waves below, steady and endless. Love had not saved her. It had revealed her. Sometimes the world gives you names to keep you small, but love teaches you to outgrow them. Her voice softened to a whisper. Sometimes one kiss changes everything. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more life-changing true stories.